Well, welcome everyone to today's Farm to School Purchasing Grant information session. So to make sure you're in the right place, this information is for producers and vendors interested in supplying Washington-grown foods to schools and childcare centers as part of the Farm to School Purchasing Grant Program. And to be clear, this grant is a grant received by schools and childcare centers, not directly to producers. However, we do want you to access this new market opportunity. So my name is Claire Finnerty, and as you heard before, I'm the Farm to School Purchasing Grant Specialist with the Washington State Department of Agriculture's Farm to School team. You may have worked with Annette Slonim last year, who is on the call as well, and is now our Farm to School lead. Or in previous years, you may have worked with Chris Iberly. So before we dive in with some quick housekeeping. So we are recording this session, and a link to the recording and slides will be emailed to everyone who registered to attend. And the link will also be posted to the Farm to School Purchasing Grant website. Please stay muted to help minimize disruptions. You can have your video on or off, whichever you prefer. We will have time for questions at the end of the presentation, but you can also type them into the chat so we make sure that they don't get missed. And you can also type your introduction into the chat so we can see where everyone is calling from. So today we'll cover a quick intro of our team, our Farm to School team. We'll mostly be spending time focusing on the grant program overview, what the eligible products are, what you can sell to grantees, what the documentation requirements are for grantees, how to connect with them, and we'll even have someone from Eat Local First here. Marissa will be here to demonstrate the Washington Food and Farm Finder, how you might want to get onto that website if you're not already. And again, we'll leave time for question and answers. So within the Washington Department of Agriculture, the Farm to School team is within the Regional Markets Program. So we support the economic viability of small and direct marketing farms and increase the availability of Washington-grown products in schools, other institutions, and on the tables throughout our state. We do this by providing technical assistance, different resources, outreach and education, market access and development, and strengthening partnerships. In addition to the different resources, we do offer one-on-one technical assistance, training and events, presentations and workshops, networking events, and we do plan on hosting a specific Farm to School farmer buyer networking event later in the winter or spring. So please stay tuned for that. You should get an email about that in the coming months. And if you do sell to food hubs, or we have some food hubs represented today, many schools are seeking higher volumes of food purchase from them. And so you are helping support the development of a stronger value chain and regional food system, which is the goal of the regional markets team. So in addition, so I wanted to point out some of our online resources. One is the Handbook for Small and Direct Marketing Farms. It's also known as the Green Book. And if you haven't seen it, the Green Book provides fact sheets on selling to schools and other institutions and rules based on the specific products or sales channels. So we do have fact sheets online that you can download. We also have this link will be provided in when you get these slides. So definitely check that out. So diving into Farm to School, so our program promotes farm to school connections and is dedicated to fostering relationships between schools and agricultural producers in Washington state. So with close to 300 school districts in Washington, schools can be a key market opportunity for local producers. And our goal is to support expanding economic opportunities for farmers while educating students about the connections between food and farming and health and the environment. So this list contains a number of ways that we support farm to school connections. And last year was the first time in WSDA history that we were able to offer farm to school purchasing grants, which is why we're all here today. So the Farm to School Purchasing Grant is a program made possible by the Washington State Legislature and long-term partners and advocates who have been pushing for this investment for many years. Grantees include schools and childcare centers. So if I say farm to school or only mention school districts, I also most likely mean childcare centers as well. So grant funds are used to reimburse their purchases of Washington grown foods. In the first round, which was January through August, $1 million was spent on Washington grown foods by 52 grantees. And we just awarded $3.5 million to 83 grantees across the state to spend on local foods between now and June 30th of next year. So to break down this year's grantees who are potential buyers for you all, we have school districts and childcare centers from all over the state, each serving a different amount of children that varies widely. So, childcare centers, they usually serve about in the hundreds of children versus a school district, of course, in thousands or tens of thousands of students. So I say that because there's a place for all sizes of vendors to match up with grantees based on their sizes and, of course, geographic location. This map we provided is a list of grantees by county are linked here. And so you can access these and see. We'll also be distributing a contact list of food service directors who gave us permission to be contacted by you all. So check out who's nearby, who you might have an opportunity to sell to. So how to sell to schools? Grantees are able to purchase Washington products from either direct or indirect sources. We do encourage grantees to purchase directly from the farmer or producer whenever possible. However, we know that due to limited farmer capacity or school capacity, it maybe makes more sense for the grantee to source the Washington grown product through an existing distributor. If you are selling directly to a school district, they need to follow federal and state procurement rules. So you may be asked to provide a quote for your products if the total value of the purchase is over $10,000. So just watch out for that. Lots of different avenues of where you might sell to schools. In terms of food safety, so grantees must follow all of the applicable food safety requirements when purchasing foods for reimbursement. For produce, schools and institutions have different requirements that they set, and they may be they may ask you to have voluntary certifications such as GAP, GHP, maybe even organic certification. So that's up to each school district. If you don't have any of those certifications, sometimes they also will ask for a food safety checklist and your food safety plan. In terms of red meat, beef, pork, lamb, and goat, when those are served in schools, they must be harvested in a USDA inspected facility, and that does include mobile slaughter facilities that are USDA inspected. And they must be processed at a USDA inspected facility. And if they're not processed in a USDA inspected facility, there is one exception that they could be processed with a retail exemption through the Federal Meat Inspection Act. So if you have that exemption, you would communicate that with the schools, because they're usually looking for that USDA inspected stamp of approval. In terms of poultry food safety, poultry must be harvested and processed under USDA inspection unless you have under the $20,000 or 20,000 bird amount, which is an exception. Note that a WSDA special poultry permit is not sufficient because it does not allow sales off the farm. So if you have any specific food safety questions, definitely check in with us and we can help you work one-on-one with schools. So what kinds of foods can schools buy with their grant funds? They can buy anything that is grown in Washington, basically. So whole and minimally processed fruits, vegetables, herbs, meat, seafood, legumes, and grains. And minimally processed means could be refrigerated, adjusted for size, washed, packed, added some sort of preservation. And if you are selling processed food, that is a little bit different. We do ask that at least 51% of agricultural raw material is grown in Washington. So if that's the case, we do require documentation. Some examples would be baking mix or bread, pizza dough, hot dogs, yogurt, or cheese. So again, to be considered grown in Washington, it must be at least 51% of the raw materials in Washington. Something to note is that some grantees have significant experience purchasing local food, and others it might be their first time. So we provided a number of resources to them to help them learn about what products are available when, such as this Washington grown seasonality chart, but it might take a bit of education to help grantees understand what products are available when and how they might fit into their food service operations. So this is really exciting. We looked at what products schools bought last year, and almost 2/3 or $600,000 of the purchases were for fruits, vegetables, and herbs last year from January to August. Schools and childcare centers tended to prefer produce that requires minimal processing. It's ready to eat for their students, such as apples, berries, and vegetables for their salad bar. Given that some schools have limited labor and equipment for scratch cooking in the kitchens, that's why they prefer the minimally processed foods. We included a column that was optional for schools to fill out to tell us how they used the foods that they purchased last year. So here's some fun examples. They made a pear crisp, sugar snap peas were their harvest of the month feature in July. They served broccolis as little trees for snack at a childcare center. Smoked salmon, which was purchased as a Father's Day event taste test. Mushrooms were cooked into a vegetable soup. Hand-pressed bison patties were made for an outdoor barbecue celebration, and whole wheat focaccia bread from a bakery that sources local wheat. So schools are really getting super creative, and because they have these grant funds, are able to have these really great, awesome additional foods for kids. So many grantees choose to purchase local meat because the quality is often better than their usual USDA commodities that they receive. And although fluid milk is not allowable, with these grant funds, schools do purchase, they can purchase cheese and yogurt. So that was a really popular ingredient, yogurt for parfait at breakfast. The intent of the grant was for schools to purchase local foods that they otherwise could not have afforded in their budgets. And so we're continuing to see that and work on that goal. So remember, each grantee varies in size and need, from small childcare centers that scratch cook and buy whole foods to large urban districts that provide fresh whole foods for snacks. So it's important to make that connection with the grantee whose needs match your own capacities and what you have to offer. This map also shows where those dollars were spent, and you can see a lot went to Yakima County, which is where a lot of the apple packers are. So we do an apple crunch on Taste Washington Day. A lot of schools have kids all biting into an apple at the same exact time to hear that crunch. So that could be why, and schools love apples. So we saw a lot from Yakima. So what is not eligible? So schools cannot buy, we said, fluid milk. So fluid milk, the reason for this is to expand the types of products purchased for school meals, as many districts already source milk from Washington farms. So again, this does not exclude value-added dairy products such as yogurt or cheese. And please note that in order to maximize the impact of these new purchasing dollars, grantees may not request reimbursement for orders of Washington Foods placed through these different programs such as DoD Fresh, USDA Foods, and the other different programs. And so if you're a vendor that sells through one of these programs, you can still sell products to school districts for reimbursement with these grant funds, as long as those orders are placed outside of these existing programs. And remember, also our deadline is June 30th, so foods purchased after then would not be able to be reimbursed. In terms of documentation, this information is intended to help you understand what documentation grantees are required to maintain. So grantees are required to identify the farm or producer name and location when requesting reimbursement, and save all the backup documentation. And that might be in a receipt or invoice, wherever you have your farm name, wherever that's indicated, they would need to save that. So if you are selling a process item, again, we will ask them to reach out to you with this form, the documenting 51% Washington State processed food products, or an equivalent form. So I'm wondering if any of you all are selling processed foods. So if you are, can you type in the chat and let me know? Because I want to go over an example if that is the case. If not, I'll fly through it. But take a moment in the chat. I'll wait and see if anyone's is selling any processed foods, like dairy. Oh, okay, I see baked goods. Awesome. Yep, great. Okay, we got baked goods. So that's perfect because we're gonna use rolls as an example. Ooh, I see processed dried cherries. So we would consider dried cherries to be minimally processed, unless you're adding some sort of other ingredient, but we wouldn't require any documentation for dried fruit normally. But thanks for sharing that, Landon. Yes, the chocolate chip cookies, I've seen those, and the rolls, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go through this example because this is the form that a grantee might reach out to you with. So let's say you're selling rolls. So you would go through and you would list the Washington ingredients. So for example, flour came from this farm and the address and how much. So here, this column we need by weight or by volume. So you can see that there is the weight, and there's a different type of flour here, wheat flour. So there's the weight again. And then you would put the total amount of all Washington ingredients. So you total those up, and then you add the total amount of all raw products. So of course, in the case of bread, that might be yeast and salt as well, maybe some honey, if that's not locally purchased in Washington. So you take that total and then you take the percentage. And in this case, it's 57%. So if you want to put in the chat, is this reimbursable? Are these rolls reimbursable? Can you sell them to schools to be reimbursed for this grant? I'll take a yes or no in the chat. Tina says yes. And you're right, Tina. Yep. So it's 51%. As long as the ingredients are 51% from Washington, then we would reimburse for this processed product. So if you have any, if you want to go through this together, if a grantee sends this to you, just let us know. And you can always reach out if you have any issues with that. All right. Well, I'm going to check in. So is Marissa here or Jess? Because we have a guest, Marissa, and I think they're coming at 12:30. So I might skip over this slide actually. And Annette, you can let me know if they show up and we can get them all clued in. But I'm going to skip over this slide for now and talk about outreach tips and consideration. So here's some tips and consideration to keep in mind and to help you prepare for a productive conversation with grantees. So as I'm sure you're all aware, districts and childcare centers are facing many supply chain challenges and labor shortages. So we recommend you communicate early, be responsive, and be mindful when reaching out to very busy food service directors, and of course yourself, who are very busy. So we recommend you identify your niche, create a short list of school-ready products. That could be that you keep aside small fruits, so undersized apples, maybe you set those aside and you sell those to schools. Pluots are popular, carrots, baby potatoes, cucumbers, ground beef, any of the products we mentioned before. Just see what you can specialize in, definitely in terms of size as well. So other things to know about your school buyer is that they need to set their menus far in advance. They might have limited processing capacity. Definitely check in with them on that in your local school, whoever's closest to you. Ask them if they have processing equipment. Ask them if they do scratch cooking or not. Like I said, they set their menus in advance because they have to meet specific meal patterns and nutrition requirements through the federal government. So they don't have a ton of flexibility, but you can work with them to say, hey, let's swap out this fruit or vegetable for something more seasonal. And additionally, their volumes can be flexible. So if you can't provide everything a buyer needs, they may buy part of it from you, and that's okay. So you don't have to supply 100% of the product every single week. If you do end up scheduling a meeting with a buyer, you could bring your seasonal availability list, including what products and varieties are available when, their pack size, their price per unit. You can bring more information about your farm in a brochure. They would love samples, I'm sure. You should ask them what their needs are. So look at their menus, like I said, for opportunities to substitute local meals. They usually have their menus public online. You can search for those. Consider culturally relevant foods for the student population. Another tip is that you can request a competitor pricing to see where your products are most competitive. You also could discuss opportunities to feature local foods, such as in a Harvest of the Month. That's a program that is really common in schools where they make a big day of it and have different signage on the specific food and make a meal out of the specific Harvest of the Month. So you can work with them on that. Lots of different ways. So additionally, as a local producer and participant of a farm to school program, you play an important role in the community. So you can also connect with students about the environment and local agriculture. You could host a farm tour for a school field trip. You could visit school cafeterias and hold a tasting event, or you can visit classrooms and tell stories about your farm and the specific foods that you grow, or you can participate in special events that happen throughout the year. So we are actually currently in National Farm to School Month, which is October, and Taste Washington Day happens on the first Wednesday in October. So I know that just passed, but maybe start thinking about it for next year. And in general, again, we love to emphasize that it's okay to start small. Maybe if you're a small farm, you can start with the childcare center or start with the school district, but work maybe with only one school in the school district. So no need to supply an entire school district. This slide is about information you.
Can I interrupt you really quickly?
Yeah.
Joined us, and so I thought maybe we could go back to the previous slide.
Great.
Since I know they have limited time to be with us on this call.
Perfect. We'll do that.
So I will introduce Marissa Valiant from, and looks like Jess is there as well, from Sustainable Connections and the Eat Local First Collaborative. WSDA has been working with Marissa for over a year now on building out a new section of the Washington Food and Farm Finder as a wholesale portal. And this portal was really designed with institutional buyers and school food buyers, emergency food assistance buyers in mind to make it easier to locate and identify both products and vendors that are in your area and interested in selling to you. So I'm going to pass it off to Marissa to share more about the Finder and I think maybe do a little demo and answer any questions that you all have.
Great, thank you, Annette. My name is Marissa, it sounds like Vanessa, and this is my colleague, Jess. So yeah, thanks for that introduction. So the Washington Food and Farm Finder is a tool that has been, expanded, I should say, from Northwest Washington to be a statewide resource. It's utilized and run by 6 different organizations, including TILP Alliance, WSU Food Systems, Pierce County Fresh is also a partner, as well as some extension partners on the Olympic Peninsula. And really our goal is to connect people with local food and farms in all of the different places that they can find it and buy it. And that includes institutions and schools. So we're really excited about the work we've been able to do with WSDA Farm to School. And mainly today, we just want you to know that we're here to support you in creating a listing on the Washington Food and Farm Finder and helping you fill it out. There's a lot of data that we collect because We have several different ways for people to search and utilize the tool, whether you have a CSA for your farm, or you have a farm stand, or maybe you only sell wholesale to value-added food businesses. All of those things can be captured and expressed on eatlocalfirst.org and the Washington Food and Farm Finder. And so we're here to help you fill out a listing and make sure that it's optimized so that you can reach the sellers that you want to. And in this case, the wholesale product finder, which I'm not sure, Claire, if I can share my screen.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm going to just give a quick walkthrough, and thank you, Claire and Annette, for sharing some of the links. We do have some tutorials that are on YouTube for how to use this. And there's also links to go ahead and set up a one-on-one call with either Jess or myself or someone from our team, and we'll walk you through how to use this. So when you go to eatlocalfirst.org, at the top of the screen, you'll see this link for Washington Food and Farm Finder. And when you hover over that, you can click on Find a Wholesale Vendor. That's how you would navigate to this page. The URL is eatlocalfirst.org/wholesale. And I guess another key point is that we're working actively to promote this tool to buyers, as well as working with producers to get listed on it. So we have audiences and time to spend with farm to school professionals and food service professionals. And we also work with restaurants, and we work with all scales of buyers, and we'll be at several conferences throughout this season and into 2023, and helping them learn about this tool and how to use it as well. So know that it is a work in progress, and your feedback is also always welcome. We are in the midst of a campaign to solicit stakeholder feedback, because there's a lot of development work that we're doing on this tool. We really want to make it work for you. We want to make it work for farm to school, and make sure that we're helping people find the data and the connection points that they need. So if you scroll down on this page, you'll see that there are a whole bunch of filters on the left side of the page. So people can search by product, they can search by distribution method, delivery areas. If we expand some of these filters, we can also see more specific types of food, or what type of processing is available. We can also search by information about the producer. So if folks are trying to prioritize sourcing from historically underrepresented producers or businesses, we have identities. These are self-selected by the producers and the businesses themselves. There's also certifications and practices. Please forgive us. We are right next to a school, a middle and high school. It's a rowdy bunch right about this time. So that large thump, everything's fine. It's fine. There's also a piano that will maybe chime in a minute. I apologize. And so you can filter by any of these items, and then you'll see at the top that these results will get filtered down based on those items. So when we click on any of these details, then you'll get to go learn about the producer and the rest of their business. What else do they do? Who else are they selling to? So that's the purpose of this tool. That's a really brief overview of how it works. And yeah, if there's any questions that y'all have for us, we'd love to hear it.
Thanks, Marissa and Jess. Yeah, I've seen your posters all over the state, and it's just great. I just saw a brochure as well in a hotel, so it's definitely getting a lot of marketing, so that's great. And yeah, just to emphasize, we do use this tool a lot and do recommend it a lot to schools and childcare centers. So if you're not on there, it would be a really great opportunity to do so. And if you're struggling at all, you have support to do that too. So if anyone has any other questions for them.
Good question. I should have mentioned it is free. Free to list your business, free to schedule a call with us and set up a consultation and make sure that your listing is optimized. It's in our best interest to make sure that you're selling your products and we're not profiting on it by any means. We do have funding, both from federal funding for a wholesale project that we're working on over the next 3 years and some state funding. And we're looking for support to get ongoing state funding so that we can keep this tool going, but there is no fee. We're just here to help.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, that is very fitting that you're there next to a school. I thought I heard some Halloween music. I thought that was just for fun, but
That's real fun.
that's awesome. Well, thank you both so much. We love the Washington Food and Farm Finder. I use it on the daily, so it's great. And feel free to stay on or head off if you need to.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. I will start sharing my screen again. Okay, so we went through these different tips and considerations when you're selling to schools and childcare centers. And if you do end up getting that conversation going and setting up a meeting with your closest grantee or a grantee that meets your size requirements and needs, this is some basic information that the schools might want to know. So you could always come back to this slide and prepare kind of those answers in advance of having a meeting with the food service director. So we've shared all this information, and now we want to make that connection with you and the grantees. So you can visit our website to see that list of the grantees by county. Again, there's 83 of them across the state. We will also be sending you a contact list, and you'll get that via email. Everyone who's on this call today will get that. Or if you're listening to this as a recording, you can email us and we'll send that to you. It's not fully complete because it was an opt-in from the food service directors if they wanted to have that open to the public, their information. And then lastly, again, create or update your listing in the Washington Food and Farm Finder, because we do often make that recommendation for schools to start there if they're new. So here are some additional tools. We maintain a toolkit of resources on our website for farms and schools to use, such as the Selling to Schools 101 fact sheet. All of these are links. So the online toolkit provides tips for small farmers to learn about how to develop a new sales relationship with the school buyer. And we're also here as well to have that one-on-one support, but definitely would recommend coming back to this slide and clicking on all of those links and checking out the different things there. Outside of the Department of Agriculture Farm to School team, we do support the engagement in farm to schools across the state through the Washington State Farm to School Network and the network's communities of practice. So farmers can join the Washington State Farm to School Network at the website here listed, and that will get you even more connected to schools. We do recommend, since we have multiple communities of practices, which are kind of like work groups, we recommend the local food in school meals community of practice that gets together. They'll start meeting up again this winter. Currently, not super active, but will be starting up again this winter. So we'd love to have you a part of that. Some additional opportunities, again, outside of the grant, but super exciting for Farm to School, is the TILF Alliance. If you're going to be there in November, we highly recommend the Farm to School intensive track, which is 2 different sessions back to back on Friday. And so those will take you through, things we weren't able to cover today that go farther in depth and are more, hands-on. So how to go about purchasing and procurement rules and regulations, how to build those relationships and communicate with buyers, and all the nitty-gritty of working with schools. We also, as I mentioned in the beginning, will be hosting WSDA farmer buyer networking meetings that are specific to Farm to School. And we hope to have those started up again in the spring. Additionally, this is a great resource, Profiting from Your Pivot. So I'd like to highlight this. It's a 5-month specialized business coaching service for small and regionally marketing farms in Washington. It's a project that's led by Business Impact Northwest, and WSDA is a partner. So it's also bilingual in English and Spanish, and it's an opportunity to connect with business professionals. You'll get your own farmer mentor and personalized training tailored to your needs. So it takes place November through April, and you'll be in that cohort, and you would need to apply by October 31st. So it's a great way to get a mentor and learn about how to expand your business. Finally, so we're here to help. I know that's a lot of information that we provided today, but you can always reach out to us and we can have one-on-one time, one-on-one support to Annette or I, and we hope that you do so, and we hope that you have questions. And yeah, if you have time, if we all have time, we will open it up to questions now. You can choose to put the questions in the chat, and Annette can read those out to me, or just feel free and unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm unmuted. I've run up to the staffing difficulties and also getting the kitchen level staff on board with the extra work. And I'm wondering if WSDA is working on any additional training so that they learn to really love us and not be like, whole butternut squash again, because they're used to getting it cubed in a plastic bag or not having to cook anything at all. So I'm just, wondering what is happening on your end for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And it's totally different from school to school. Some schools are already doing the scratch cooking, and I've run into a few schools recently that actually have solved that issue of processing foods by starting a cooking or culinary class as a whole class, and then using students to do that processing while learning the kitchen skills. So that's one great solution that I've seen. But of course we know it's a big, it's kind of this big block sometimes for schools to make those purchases of whole foods. And we are working on different opportunities. So OSPI, which is our Department of Education, basically, they've been doing scratch cooking trainings. And we also have worked with SNAP Education to provide scratch cooking trainings for childcare centers. So it is kind of this slow process where it takes a while for schools to be able to have that capacity. But that's a big goal of ours, is in terms of technical assistance for schools, is working on scratch cooking and providing equipment grants, things like that through OSPI. And even this year, this grant, the second round of the purchasing grant, we're allowing non-food costs. So the schools and the childcare centers are able to purchase different equipment. I know someone purchased a carrot peeler recently, or food processors. So that can be easier and it's not so difficult. Yeah.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Did you have anything to add to that, Annette, at all?
Yeah, no, I think that was a great response. It will vary district by district. And I think if you come across a district and you propose an item that they are hesitant or nervous about bringing in, that might be an opportunity to do some taste testing or try it out on a small scale. But I think you want the districts to be successful with the products that you're offering. And so kind of recognizing what's going to work and what's not going to work. And instead of trying to put a square peg in a round hole, say like, all right, let's table butternut squash for next year. And what else, like, what is your, and that's a good question to ask going into it, is like, what is your processing capacity? What is your kitchen setup like? What is going to be easy enough for food service staff to incorporate? We do a lot of work on the school side with food service directors, kind of coaching them through how to get staff on board if there is resistance. But I think one of the things that we've learned through many, many years of farm to school work is that folks will either come around, or if they are really resistant, that's okay. And it's okay to focus your energies where folks are receptive and they're excited and they are willing to take on some of the change. And so if you are experiencing a lot of pushback, that might just mean that it's not a good fit or opportunity at that time. Doesn't mean you have to write them off completely, but don't feel like you have to really push through something if it's not if there's not a lot of interest or those changes.
It's really more because we work with a bunch of different schools at many different levels. Shoreline makes their own blueberry muffins out of local flour, where some are not, they just want everything minimally processed. So there's just a wide range of capability on the school end. And I'm hearing from food service directors their frustration of really being committed to this and having the resistance be at the kitchen level. So I think they're just part of the evolution of this work, which is it's a long process and we're not 100% there, and we just have to keep working on it. So
it is, and for folks like Michelle and others who, you're already in frequent communication with food service directors, especially I'd say in these larger districts, they have they're directors for a reason. They have a vision, they have a mission, and that they're trying to implement. And of course, there's a lot of other pieces that have to fall in line in order for that to happen. And so sometimes it could just be a simple reminder of like, okay, where are you having difficulties? Where are you not having difficulties? How, maybe we can do a field trip where we can take the staff from the school that's resistant to the staff at the school that's doing it really well. And I think you should feel free to make those types of suggestions. That's the type of coaching that we would provide to school district officials, or say, it's okay if it's not in every school this year. It's okay to start with the schools that are receptive and on board, and then you can demonstrate that success and have your own staff kind of be the key messengers to others to bring others along. But it is a challenge, especially with the larger districts and when there's a lot of other folks involved that may or may not be totally on board, and that's part of the process. I did have one question in the chat that came to me about finding information for students with dietary restraints or other information like ordering volumes, spending allowance, and menu requirements. So that's a great question. I mean, districts are obviously, you know, consider you know, allergens and dietary restrictions and accommodations for their students. So that's a conversation that'll vary district by district that you would have with the food service director, or the child nutrition program supervisor, especially if you are selling a product that like grains or dairy or another product that contains common allergens. As far as and of course, ordering volumes, that's going to vary district by district as well. In terms of menu requirements, so Claire mentioned that school districts do set their menus far in advance. A lot of districts also operate on a cyclical menu, so it might be like an 8-week menu or monthly menu that gets repeated. And menu requirements as far as meal components, so grains, protein, fruit, vegetable, the number of servings that are required in order for a district to be reimbursed from USDA for those meals are set by the USDA. It's a pretty complicated system. I would say you don't have to understand that system or know that system, but just know that it exists. And so it's not always so simple as swapping out one ingredient for another. Even fruits and vegetables are grouped into different categories. There's the red orange category, the dark leafy green, dark green category. Like for, you know, certain things aren't always classified nutritionally the way that you would think they might be. And so that can just be one of the things to kind of talk through based on whatever product is that you're selling, kind of understand where that fits in the meal pattern requirement. And those are some of the restrictions. If you are interested in that information, OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, is the agency that administers and oversees all of the USDA child nutrition programs, that sets the rules for National School Lunch, school breakfast, the child and adult care food program. So on their website, and I'll try and find a link to drop into the chat, where you can go just to learn more about those requirements if you're interested. But I would say it's complicated and a lot of information, and maybe more than you need to know, but just to have that awareness of kind of the environment in which food service directors are operating in terms of how they have to plan their meals and what foods can be incorporated and things like that. Hopefully that answered the question and was helpful.
Thanks, Annette. Any other last minute questions? We have about 2 minutes. Well, if there's no questions, I want to thank you all for being here, for taking time out of your day, and please feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. See y'all.
Thank you.